Welcome to my talk. My name is Max Banfield. This talk I'm going to entitle The Genius and the Dumb Ones. You may see that as being offensive at the start, but give me time. Perhaps you won't. I'm the one and only person in the world who developed the modern method of treating the chronic fatigue syndrome, which thousands of copyright thieves have stolen. I also invented the world's first standing computer desk, and thousands of people want you to think they invented. They didn't. The perfect design is what I developed. So, I'm the genius. Now, who are the dumb ones? When I was talking about my ideas to various people, they would say they don't know because they're just the dumb ones. It was a very common thing for them to say. And so today I'll be discussing what I did and what the dumb ones said to me. And there are 5 groups of dumb ones which I've got here. Journalists. 2, university-based individuals who said they were only familiar with their area of study, and those who said they relied on the opinion of overseas researchers who had more knowledge of the topic. 3, physiotherapists. 4, politicians. And 5, furniture company managers. So bear with me and you might learn what goes on behind the scenes. It's quite a bit different to what happens in the way you're made aware of as a general rule. So in 1975 it was popular to believe that office workers, for example, were getting sick because of the mental stress of doing basic mathematical calculations and so forth. And it really had nothing to do with that. By 1980, I'd established that the real cause was leaning towards a desk, which was compressing everything in the chest and abdomen. And so I went rushing off to newspapers with this discovery, this conclusion, and I expected to make the front page of newspapers with this revolutionary new idea to replace the psychological theories. Well, one of the journalists I met said he's only a medical journalist. And he said he's just a dumb one. He can't make up his mind or publish anything on the basis of his own judgment. I've got to go to universities and get the support of experts, and then he'll publish something. So he said if he wrote anything of a controversial nature which challenged university opinions, then every university professor in Adelaide would close ranks against him. He'd never get another story in his life. His career as a journalist would be over. And as you can appreciate, most journalists get their science stories from universities. So he wasn't going to take a chance of losing his career. And so I had to go off to universities and get their opinions. And they were teaching psychological theories, so they said I was wrong. But I'll get on to that in a minute. In the meantime, there's another journalist who I met, and this is typical. Supposing, this is what he said to me, well, it was an example, but he said small newspapers might get $1 million a year in adverts from large companies. And if one of those companies produces a product that causes a lot of problems, for instance with health in the community, and he was to write an article about it, it'd be a waste of his time. And I said, why? And he said, because he's only a dumb one. And if he sends that report to the chief editor will screw it up and throw it in the bin and tell him not to be stupid. Because if he published it, $1 million worth of adverts would stop coming into the paper. And there are variations on that theme. It doesn't matter whether it's 100,000 a year or 200,000. It doesn't matter. The fact is, especially small newspapers, they rely on the advertising to cover the costs of the company and their profits. They're not going to upset major contributors to the advertising. So that's two examples. Now, I mentioned that the newspaper journalists wouldn't publish anything without me getting university support. At one stage, around about 1982, I met Professor Tim Morrell. There's several biographies about him. He was doing pig beetle research in Papua New Guinea and came to Adelaide, where he's promoted to the position of head of Adelaide Medical School and founded the South Australian Department of Community Medicine. And his comments to me was he was envious of my intellectual initiative, he said. The ability to look at medical problems objectively and go about the process of solving problems. And it's a particular talent I have of that type of initiative. And he said my theory that chronic fatigue was wrong. So it's only a temporary problem. And if you can stop being in stress, it'll go away. Well, since then, everybody accepts the fact that's not true. It is chronic fatigue. In fact, after I did my research, the CDC of America renamed it chronic fatigue syndrome. Prior to that, it was called neuroses. Various other labels, and don't tell lies about it. There's plenty of variations on the themes. The label was changed. Effort syndrome, the Costa syndrome, all sorts of things went before that. Anxiety, neurosis, and hysteria, all sorts of things. So he said chronic fatigue isn't a chronic illness. Well, it is. And there are various ways of treating it, and I've produced the best method so far. The other thing he said, when I said leaning towards a desk causes sickness in office workers, not worry and stress, he said, nah. He said, that's scientifically been proven wrong. He said, if you lean forward and sit up straight, your internal organs will bounce back to the normal position and won't have any effect at all. He said, I was wrong. He said, take wrestlers, for instance. They wrestle and crush each other throughout vigorous wrestling competitions, and they get up and they don't get health problems. Well, I found that difficult to refute at that time, but I knew he was wrong. And sitting at a desk is harmful to health in certain circumstances, which I won't go into, but that's the cause of the problems and not worry and stress. So the next person I want to talk about was a guy who said he had 5 psychology degrees from 5 universities in 3 different countries. And he said that he knew that my health problems were caused by my mind and not my body, and he could scientifically prove it. So what he didn't know was that I used to be a gymnast, so I had no fear of exercise, and he was trying to argue that I did have a fear of exercise. It's ridiculous. If you don't believe me, have a look at the gymnasts at the Olympics. You're going to try and convince them they've got a fear of exercise? You're wasting your time. He was wasting his time trying to convince me, because I was a pretty good gymnast, very experienced. The other thing he said was he could scientifically prove that stress was the cause of the ailments. And I said he didn't know that I'd already been offered 3 scholarships to study psychology at the Institute of Technology. I got it for leadership in gymnastics. It was called group work. It was a 4-year part-time course and a certificate course. But it taught everything about psychology. And I knew there's no scientific proof about most things, and I knew there's no scientific proof what he was saying. So I said to this smart aleck, I said, can you give me the name of the research paper, the name of the country, the name of the research journal, the name of the author, the page numbers and the dates, And of course he ummed and ahed and messed about and wasted time. He didn't have any proof. He just kept changing his mind every 2 minutes. And he simply didn't have any such proof. So the next group of people I want to talk about is physiotherapists. Now, if you're a physiotherapist, don't get all upset. Plenty of physio told me they're just the dumb ones. I'll tell you why in a minute. But they're good at a lot of things. But when they get out of their league and start arguing, they're not. They know better at anything than anyone else who's out of their league and out of their sphere of expertise. And at that time, their physios were telling people to treat chronic fatigue. Run fast, ignore your symptoms and think positive. Well, they tried that on me and it really nearly killed me. So that's what their position was in 1976. And now they're using my methods. Well, I've had several conversations with physios for various reasons. Some things they're good at and some things they're not. So I'll give you an example, and I won't tell you what problem they were treating. I don't want to get too confusing, but this is what they said. I said, can you give me your opinion about what I should do here and what's wrong? He said, no. I said, why not? And he said, because he's not allowed to. He's just a dumb one. I said, what do you mean a dumb one? He said, he's a medical school dropout. He said, medicine's too difficult, he said. They'd have to study for another 3 years at uni. And whereas to get physio, he just drops out of physio and in 12 months he's got a certificate or a degree or whatever, and he goes out and he can make money and go off to bloody discos and parties. So that's what he said to me. I didn't argue with him. I didn't think it was stupid. He's better, more educated than the average person who leaves school, high school. So, but that's what he said to me. And I said to him, or might have been another person, something similar, and I said, why won't you tell me? He said, if he gives a medical opinion and it's wrong, it's his doctor who gets taken to court for the harm done to the patient. So if he gives an opinion without his getting it through his doctor, what they do is they write their opinion down on paper and give it to the doctor. The doctor then gives the opinion. He said if he gives advice to the patient goes back to the doctor, tells him what he said he'll get sacked. Doctors don't. He said at that time, this is the 1980s, doctors don't like physios give an opinion without their permission. So I couldn't get an opinion. I did get an opinion from him, but it was confidential. So they're not allowed to give their opinions because they're just the dumb ones, the medical school dropouts. Another physio said this to me, and they did add some useful information sometimes, right? But he said this. He said, a physio is like a private in the army. He said it's the lowest rung of the hen pecking order, the rungs in the chook shed. The researchers are at the top. The specialists come next, and they might be lieutenants. Then there's the doctors and physio. They're just the privates. And in the army, privates go to war, get shot or come back. And if they're doing anything, they've got to peel the potatoes and clean the toilets. Whereas in physio, in the healthcare sector, they just do the routine stuff. They're not allowed to usurp or override people above them. And that's what he said. Just the dumb ones. The lowest rung in the hen-pecking order of the healthcare sector. And he wasn't ashamed of himself, and I wasn't ashamed of him. He's still more educated than the average person who doesn't even complete high school. And he's gone on to further education. So that's what they said to me. I didn't argue with them. I didn't think anything negative about it. But that's the facts of what they said to me. Now, the next people who told me they were the dumb ones are politicians. What happened there? Well, I'll give you I'll give you one example. I might think of another one. The politician I'm talking about was in the 1990s. I'd written a theory that sitting at a desk and leaning forward was the cause of health problems. And by 1997, I'd invented the standing computer desk. So I went to the newspapers and they rejected it because they said I needed expert opinion, and the experts were still teaching psychological theories. And I went to a politician. I said, "What can you do to get this information out?" And I said, "Why can't you do anything to get this promoted?" And he said, "He's just a dumb one." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Yeah, but he just got voted into power because he supported the wharfies down at Port Adelaide and made sure they got decent wages." I can't expect him to understand anything about health matters, but they're very complex. So he wasn't any use to me. And that's a typical response I get from other people. And then I met him later and he said, about 15 years later, he said, "Did you know there's an article about your theory in the Advertiser?" I said, "No." So I went and read it. And the Advertiser gives the credit for my invention to a panel of international experts who had issued the first specific guidelines on how long to sit, stand and move throughout the day and use sit-stand desks. After reading all the research on the subject, when I presented that information to the Skeptic magazine, they said there's virtually no other research on this subject, virtually rejected by all medical authorities. Now all of a sudden, there's all this research on the subject, and that impression they're creating is there's thousands of people doing the research, and they mention specifically the Baker IDI Heart and Diabetes Institute in Melbourne, and they refer to an article in the British Journal of Sports Science presenting the suggestion that there's a growing need for change to make this difference in the environment of office workers. And a recommendation there by the South Australian Health and Medical Research Institute. I then later rang the Advertiser and reminded them it was my research. They refused to write about it when I was doing this research and when I invented that desk, but they refused to tell their readers. So that was Bob Gregory. Another politician who later said to me, I said, "Can you calculate how much money my research is going to save the government in healthcare costs if you implement these things?" And he said, "No, he doesn't have an accountant in his office." So I went home and did some rough calculation myself. And there are other calculations show the standing desk industry now worth $6.9 billion internationally. And he couldn't do the calculations. But since then, he's run Transform SA Health and done all sorts of things which look like he's been responsible for some changes when I don't want to say any more about it. So there's other people in politics who say they can't help me. Like they spent a month trying to help me and they can't help. They can't help me with my 23 years of research because I had a nitter and natter in Parliament House for 10 minutes. They want me to take them seriously? I don't. So that's just a brief insight into politicians. Now, the next person I want to talk to you about is the furniture company managers. Now, furniture companies of various sorts have been exploiting the health benefits that I've discovered in the advertising of their products. Whereas before they used to say, buy our furniture because it's comfy and it's stylish and they appeal to men, or they're pretty and they'll appeal to women. Now they're bragging about acting as if they've developed these things because they care about the health and happiness of people. I don't know anything about the health benefits. And so in the roundabout the year 2000, probably, I had invented the standing desk in 1998 and published it in 1999. And then I went in for a chemo and a stem cell transplant and cancer surgery and recovered. So in the next 2 or 3 years, I went and visited furniture companies to see if they would make standing desks under license to me. And I'm going to discuss what they said to me now. One of them, I went to him, and he's a nice guy, friendly guy, and he was typing with one finger, right? When I learned to type, because I was writing a book about, writing in pain at the time, about health matters, the posture theory, I learned to type because sitting at a desk for 20 minutes I could write a small amount. Typing speed, handwriting speed is 20 words a minute. And I thought, if I'm going to keep doing things on a computer, I might as well learn how to type, because that speed is 60 words a minute. And some people are really clever and they do 120 words a minute or more. Well, I calculate one stage I was doing 60 words a minute. And I said to this furniture company maker, why don't you learn how to type properly, and you'll be able to type 3 times as fast as you can type with one finger. And he said, no, he can type pretty fast with one finger. Well, I'm not disrespectful people. I said, oh, yeah, fair enough, okay. You think that's fine. You can't, right? And then I said, would you like to manufacture a standing desk under license to me? 5% royalty. You'll make a lot of money. He said, no. I said, why? He said, because nobody ever asks for them. And he'd have to set up equipment to make them in, quantity. And it'd cost him more money to set up than he could ever make selling them. Nobody ever asked for them. I said, do you realise the health benefits? He said, no, he's not a doctor, he's only a dumb one. Right? But I thought, fair enough, he's a carpenter, he's not a medical man. So I didn't think anything of it. But he said in a friendly manner, but good luck with other companies. There's a few others, and he gave me the names or rough locations of a couple of others. So I went to see another furniture company, and there was a guy there, and he was dictating to a 16-year-old girl, a typist. Why? Because he didn't know how to type. Right. He's a furniture company boss. I'm sure he was good at what he was good at, probably furniture manufacturing, but he couldn't type. And so I asked him if he'd make a standing desk according to my design. Incidentally, it's the one that's worldwide now, the only one that's correct. And for only 5% royalty. He said, no. I said, why not? It's because he had one in the showroom for a couple of years. He couldn't sell it. Nobody wanted it. I said, yeah, probably because it's a piece of junk, probably wrong design. Everything won't do anybody any good. And he said he's got it out in the back room collecting dust and he's thinking, since I've reminded him of it, going to throw it with the garbage next week. That's that guy. But he said, but good luck if you can get someone else to do it for you. So I went to another furniture company. Now, this particular company really was like a Steptoe and Sons junk shop. You've probably seen them yourself if you looked around in this type of industry. And the front room was reasonably neat. Not really, but it was presentable. And I went, he said he wasn't interested in making it because nobody ever wanted it. Nobody ever asked for them. He said, I'm wasting my time. Nobody's going to want to make them. And I went out the back. I went through a door in the office to the back. And this appeared to be very large. I can't really say whether it was the size of a very large house or a house block. It was very large, and it was full of junk furniture piled 2 or 3 desks high, and dented and broken filing cabinets and chairs and desks. And you walk down the aisle, you'd be lucky. You'd trip over something or you'd get your eye poked out from all the legs sticking out. It really was a Steptoe and Sons junk shop. And he said nobody ever asked why, and he wasn't interested. Right? Now, I visited a few others, but there's one more that I'd like to talk about. And this was in either Rundle Street or Hindley Street. There are a couple of stores there, and they sold what you'd call posh furniture to the rich. So it's very stylish, art decor type of furnishings, the sort of exotic type of furniture, really well crafted leather lounge suites and so forth, mahogany wooden furniture. And he said, no, he doesn't manufacture desks, right? That's for the manufacturers, He only buys and sells them. Like he's too good to manufacture or something. He's a little bit on the arrogant side. And he said, I'm wasting my time. Nobody wants standing desks. Nobody ever asked for them. So that's some examples I've given you of what people said. The journalists, they're dumb ones and don't know anything about health and won't publish anything without the university supporting me. The universities who said I was wrong. The physios who said the low end of the healthcare sector, the lowest rung on the chook yard or something, chook house. Politicians said they only support, the wharfies. They don't know anything about health, can't calculate costs because they haven't got accountant in their office. And the furniture companies who type with one finger, or they tell me they're the dumb ones who only make furniture. They don't know anything about health. So what's happening nowadays? Well, practically every university in the world is teaching my theories and giving the false impression to the public that these ideas were developed by ergonomics professors in America. Wasn't teams of experts, wasn't international panels of experts. I did 100% of the research and they did none of it. Absolutely none of it. They were rejecting me. And the physiotherapists, well, they're getting these ailments were considered to be mental disorders. I found a physical cause, and now the physiotherapy profession is saying they developed these ideas, and they're out now including pacing and recommendations for standing desks in their methods of deriving an income, as if they developed it. Well, they didn't. The physical cause and treatment for these conditions is something I developed because nobody else could. And the furniture companies, it's the standing desk manufacturing desktops based on my designs are made in the millions now. by tens of thousands of furniture companies. And some of them didn't exist until after I did these inventions. I've set up companies and they specialise in manufacturing and selling standing desks and desktop. No such industry existed before. And those desks were as rare as hen's teeth before me because the designs were wrong and they were poorly thought out and they're basically just taught it. Useless. So the furniture companies are calling the world leading authority on the new sit-stand desk revolution, highly creative and innovative, game-changing researchers. Well, I'm the person. I'm the genius. And now you know who the dumb ones are. Now, if you're offended for me calling you the dumb ones, why? You weren't in the past. And you're still experts at what you do. But give me the credit for solving the problems. And if you're benefited from my research because you're getting the benefits of these methods, I want you on my side and I want honest people on my side. And maybe you can do something to stop the dishonest people from claiming to do the research when in fact they did none of it. Thank you for watching.